All right, so this week, things are really heating up in England's schools. It feels like a bunch of new policies and, frankly, some systemic failures are just cranking up the pressure on everyone, head teachers, staff, and especially the students. So let's get into it. Let's take a look at what's really fueling this education pressure cooker.
So it sounds like a simple question, right? How do you actually measure a school? But the answer? Well, it's anything but simple. I mean, is it just about exam results, or is it about student well-being, attendance? What numbers, what data really tells the true story of whether a school is succeeding or failing?
Well, in England right now, that very question is at the heart of the issue, because the answer is changing. The actual tools they use for measurement are being completely overhauled, and it feels like it's happening almost overnight. And as we're about to see, these changes are piling on some intense new stress to a system that, let's be honest, was already stretched pretty thin.
Okay, so to really get our heads around what's happening, we're going to break it down. We're going to look at 3 key pressure points that have all kind of boiled over this week. And we'll start with the big one, the rapidly changing rules from the school's watchdog itself.
So kicking things off, our first big stressor comes from Ofsted. Now, if you don't know, they're the body that inspects and rates every single school in England. And they've just dropped a brand new way of looking at school performance data. And let me tell you, it's got school leaders really, really worried.
So, at the very heart of this whole thing is something called the IDSR. That's the Inspection Data Summary Report. The easiest way to think about it is like the inspector's cheat sheet or their briefing book. It's literally the first thing they look at, and it shapes everything that comes next, their questions, their focus, and their final judgment. It really does set the tone for the entire inspection.
And here's the kicker. Ofsted just changed how this whole IDSR thing works. They're now just placing schools into 1 or 3 bands for every performance metric. Below average, close to average, or above average. On the surface, it sounds super straightforward, almost clinical, right? They look at your data over a few years, compare it to the national average, and boom, you're in a box. Simple? Not exactly.
Because the really crucial point here is the timing. This whole new system was dropped with just 1 single working day's notice for some schools that were about to be inspected. I mean, can you believe that? Head teachers are understandably furious. They're arguing that this basically changes the rules of the game for the last 3 years after the fact. Just imagine preparing for the biggest exam of your life, and the day before they tell you they've changed the entire syllabus. That's pretty much the feeling in schools right now. And you know that feeling of whiplash? It isn't just about inspection data. The pressure is also seriously mounting on a completely different front. Student attendance. And that has been a massive, massive challenge ever since the pandemic.
And this is where you see this huge disconnect. On one hand, you've got the government rolling out these really ambitious, even AI-powered attendance targets for every single school. But on the other hand, the reality on the ground, well, the absence numbers just aren't really moving. They're staying stubbornly high, and that's especially true for the more disadvantaged students.
And here we go again. We see that human reaction to the policy. The unions for school leaders are basically saying, look, these targets don't actually solve the really complex reasons why kids are missing school. Instead, they say it just piles on yet more pressure. It becomes just another number to chase in a system that's already completely overflowing with targets.
All of which brings us to our third and honestly maybe the most critical pressure point of all. The absolute crisis in supporting students with special educational needs and disabilities, or SEND. Now, this is not a new problem, not by a long shot, but some new reports that just came out this week have revealed just how unbelievably dire the situation has become.
Okay, get ready for this number. 97%. Just let that sink in for a second. 97. According to the official ombudsman, that's the percentage of investigations into complaints about SEND support that are upheld. So what does that mean? It means in pretty much every single case where a family has been failed so badly that they have to make a formal complaint, the system is found to be at fault. It is a jaw-dropping figure, and it points to a massive, widespread systemic failure.
And the evidence, it just keeps piling up. I mean, just this week, council leaders warned of a total collapse of the system. We found out the key government reforms that were supposed to help, they've been delayed until 2026. New research shows this awful irony that disadvantaged kids are actually less likely to get help in the most deprived areas. And on top of all that, another report shows this huge imbalance, where some mainstream schools are trying to support 6 times as many high-needs pupils as others. They're calling it a breaking point for a reason.
So, okay, let's step back. You add all this up, the pressure from data targets, the attendance goals, a support system for vulnerable kids that is completely failing. What's the real-world impact? What is the actual human cost for the young people and the teachers who are caught right in the middle of this whole mess? Well, a really big new report gives us a pretty chilling clue. It found a shocking, and I mean shocking, 76% rise just since 2019 in a number of young people, we're talking 16 to 34, who aren't in education or work because of a mental health condition. Now, of course, the causes are complex, but it paints a really stark picture of a generation that's struggling, coming out of an education system that is itself under just immense strain.
And that strain, it is absolutely being felt by the teachers on the front lines. Even while the government is pushing for more after-school clubs and enrichment, new research shows that more than a third of the teachers running these really vital clubs are doing it unpaid, in their own time. I mean, on one hand, that's an amazing testament to their dedication, but it's also a huge red flag, a sign of a workforce that's just being asked to give more and more and more.
So that leaves us with this final, really important question. When you combine last-minute, rule-changing data with top-down targets that don't match reality and a support system for the most vulnerable kids that is just crumbling, you get exactly what we've been talking about, a pressure cooker. The big question we really have to ask is, what's going to give first? And maybe more importantly, what is the ultimate price that's being paid by the students and teachers right at the very heart of all this?